In the name of Jesus, amen. They had no idea what was coming their way. I think they thought it was all going to be hunky-dory, rainbows and roses and unicorns, a utopian paradise, a messianic age. They had no idea. Their hopes would be dashed, crushed like a wine glass dropped on concrete and smashed with a sledgehammer. The one on whom they had pinned their hopes, he would be brutally beaten, condemned as a criminal, and sentenced to be strung up on a cross to die. They had no idea. And so Jesus gets them ready. John 13 through 17 gives a story, Jesus washing the feet of the disciples, and a long set of speeches by Jesus on the night when he was betrayed. And scattered throughout those 4 chapters are passages like the one we heard. John 14, Jesus says, on the night before he will be brutally beaten, on the night before he will be ultimately sentenced to die, he says to his disciples, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give it to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." Here is Jesus before the storm explodes upon him, saying, "Peace." How in the world can he tell them that he's leaving his peace with them? The answer comes, I think, in John 16. Jesus said, "I've said these things to you that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world." Now, if I had said those words, for one thing, you would still be dead in your sins and trespasses, because I can't save you. But if I had said those words, I would have said, "I will overcome the world," future. But before I can do that, I have to undergo all these terrible things. But what does Jesus say before being brutally beaten, before suffering terribly, not for his own sins, for he had none, but for the sins of you and me and every other human being? What does Jesus say before he's raised from the dead and ascends in glory? He says that night, "I have overcome the world." It's an already done deal. How can that be? Jesus knows that the Father has already ordained that the pain he would experience would result in pleasure, eternal pleasure, for all who believe in him, as we are reconciled to the Father and enjoy pleasures at God's right hand. Jesus knew that God had already ordained that the suffering he would experience unjustly at the hands of us, his creatures, would result in salvation for us, his sinful creatures. Jesus knew that God had already ordained that the death he died would be the death of death itself for you and for me, would be our victory over death. Already on that night, before he began to suffer, he had overcome the world for you and for me. In some ways, I think we see ourselves as being a little like the disciples. We have no idea what's coming at us. Have you ever woke up in the morning and thought you're going to check the news feeds and then thought, maybe not? Like, I'm not sure I even want to list the terrible things that have happened in the past 7 weeks, because I will forget some of the very terrible things that have happened. And it kind of makes me anxious. My kids are the same age as many of you, ranging from 15 to 24, with 2 in between. And I worry about the world that they are inheriting. I worry how things will go for them. And if the literature on, college students, you are studied, and if the literature on college students is true, college students experience a huge amount of anxiety over what is coming at them. Partly, I think, because of the uncertainty. But my brothers and sisters in Christ, you actually already know what's coming at you, unlike the apostles. We human beings are morally ambiguous in our life with one another. We are capable of the most tender, touching acts of compassion, and we are also capable of the most cold and cruel acts of brutality. It might get better, it might get worse. Creation groans under the weight of the curse of sin. So yeah, there are going to be more natural disasters. You know this already. And yet Jesus' words to his apostles are Jesus' words to you as well. My peace I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. How so? The pain that you may experience in this world, pain perhaps inflicted upon you by parents, friends, even that special someone. Jesus has been through that pain. He went out and began preaching, and his mom and his brothers came to take him home, basically saying, that guy in there preaching is a fool, and we need to shut him down now, abandoned by his family. And then, in the moment of his greatest need, abandoned by those who had followed him for 3 years. Jesus knew pain. And yet God took that pain and untwisted it into eternal pleasure for all who believe in Christ. When you are in pain, Christ is with you, and he has overcome the world. That pain is not the end of the story. God is writing the end of the story in Christ. And Christ has overcome the world for you. The suffering that we look out and see, Christ has experienced suffering, tremendous suffering. He watched a world that suffered, sometimes apparently senselessly. Towers fell on people and killed them out of the blue back then too. But Christ is with his people in their suffering. And just as God the Father took that crown of thorns that caused Jesus so much suffering and untwisted it into a cross that won us salvation, so God is also writing the story of your suffering, a story that ends with your salvation in Christ, because Christ has overcome the world. And death? You know the answer to that one. Christ died too and destroyed death by rising from the dead, so that death itself is not a final chapter, but merely one chapter in the life of a Christian, because God is writing your story, and Christ has overcome the world for you. Peace I give to you, says Jesus. This is not some kind of stoic peace where you kind of suck it up, buttercup, and just pretend that the world really doesn't bother you because you're not in control. This is no Marcus Aurelius. Just be emotionally neutral no matter what happens. This is a peace that comes from knowing that God is in control and has overcome the world in Christ. This is not a peace that comes from looking out at humanity and hoping and waiting for that moment when we finally get it and life becomes better. Please don't do that. You will be disappointed. This is a peace that comes from knowing that God has looked at humanity and seen that we cannot bring peace. And so he has brought it in Christ. And so the words of Jesus to his apostles are Jesus' words to you today. In the world, you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world, and he's done it for you. in his name. Amen.